So the next speaker is the head of the UCL Atheist Secularist Humanist Society, Ash. She also just got funded on GoFundMe for her master's. She was on the BBC on a few things. And I remember she got really mad at me because I said, when I was advertising it, I said she's trying to study mammoth poop. And she said, no, I'm studying the spores that live in mammoth poop. Very, very clear distinction there. So I'd like you to put your hands together for Keziah.
It's pronounced Keziah as far as I know. Most people, normally people will pronounce it Keziah, Keziah, and I'm wondering if I've got the pronunciation wrong, I'm not sure. So Keziah, my Christian name, comes from the Old Testament, from the book of Job. You may know the story. Job is very faithful, but God decides to test his faith by killing his wife, all his children, and all of his livestock. After a few years of turmoil, but continues to, believe in God. God rewards Job with a new wife and 3 daughters, and one of the daughters is called Keziah. So my family are not religious at all, not practicing any religion. My mum has some sort of interesting ideas about what's going on in the universe, crystals and Jesus and things like this. So she sent me to a Catholic school. This was just because it was the best school in the town. I was 3 years old when I was baptised, and I remember it quite well. I remember being quite confused about why there was a strange man putting water on my head. And one of my earliest memories was coming home from school, from primary school, so I must have been like 6 or 7. And I said to my mum, Mrs. So-and-so says, Jesus is the fruit of thy womb. Is it like a pineapple? But this is the problem with faith schools, because children put a lot of authority into adults, never mind into teachers. And you get sent to a faith school and they have a very narrow and indoctrinatory curriculum. So I attended faith school, primary school, Catholic school I should say, and secondary school as well. And it was in secondary school that I was really drawn into Catholicism and started to truly believe in it. And the main reason why I believed in Catholic principles was because of the influence of my teachers and my school and the practice that we did every day. We prayed every day, we did the morning offering in the morning. And then later on in the day, I would be annoyed with myself because I forgot to dedicate all my thoughts, words and actions to God by lunchtime. But fortunately, we prayed again at lunchtime, so I remembered by then. And then we prayed again in the evening. So in Catholic secondary school, we actually did religious studies, GCSE, that was purely based on Catholicism. So it's the Catholic Religious Studies GCSE. And they really pushed it on us, and we did it a year early, in fact. I'm just going to say a few things about what they taught us there. And this was our teacher telling us, not this is what Catholics believe. They were saying, you believe this, this is true. They told us that an abortion would be, when abortion is carried out, the baby comes out like whole, alive, and is left in a bin bag to die in like the garbage. And they showed us pictures of babies in bags, God knows where they came from. We had to do our GCSE religious studies, Catholic religious studies coursework on some of the more gruesome abortion methods and what Catholics can do about stopping abortion, one method Catholics can stop abortion from happening is praying. We were taught that IVF is a form of adultery because it involves a third party doing the test tube things. We were taught that if you're barren or infertile, that is part of God's plan, and you should accept that and not go on to have IVF or to have children, but you should dedicate your life perhaps by becoming a nun or something. We were taught that the only acceptable contraception method was the rhythm method. And crucially, for the religious studies GCSE exam, And I was a very studious young woman, and I studied very hard for my GCSEs, so I took it really seriously. We had to learn Bible quotes to be able to write those down in the exam to get good marks. And that was where a lot of these things were forced into my head, I think. The big school trip that we had in secondary school was to a Bible camp, I suppose. It was to a place called the Briars in Crouch in Derbyshire, and I went there. Most of the students at the school went there once. I went back 3 times because I enjoyed it so much. The daily activity was based around prayer and learning about, general Christian stuff. And there was this one guy. I should mention this. This Catholic retreat is run by students on their gap year, and they're really passionate, lovely people, make you feel very included. And when we left the Briars, we would have a meeting where all of the children would be sitting around in the dark, and a candle was passed round each child, or the young adult, a teenager, preteen, and other people would say very nice things about them, and people would be crying at this. It was touching stuff. But I feel that it just drew me further into this Catholic community, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is a bad thing when they tell you lots of heinous things and make you believe things that are just plain wrong. So I recall there was this one man, one young adult, maybe he was like 19, 20, called Tom, who would come frequently to our school. We would have, sometimes our lesson would be cancelled. We would go to the chapel to sit with him, and he would give us very intimate lessons on his work with CAFOD, which is the Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, sort of like the Catholic Oxfam. He would tell us about how he was doing all this, going to save Africa, and it was his mission, it's what Jesus wanted. And he was at the Bible camp as well. And, he was a lovely young man, and it really inspired me to, dedicate my life to serving Jesus. Not like every morning we would say the morning offering, and I'd think, today everything I'll do will be for Jesus. Well, I thought I should give my whole life to Jesus. So I decided to pursue a undergraduate degree in development studies at SOAS, which is just around the corner, the School of Oriental and African Studies. And I thought it was my thing to do with my life was to go and save Africa, and be a good Christian, and maybe work for CAFOD or something. Suffice it to say, I did leave and pursued a different degree here at UCL. Now, my journey to faithlessness was quite long. I think even when I was, say, 16, when I was a Catholic, and I would call myself a Catholic or a Christian and say I believed in God, there was something in the back of my mind making me think, this isn't true, I know this is not to be true, I have objections to this morality, these things they're saying about IVF. But I made sure to self-censor myself, and I suppose trying to fulfill some confirmation bias as much as possible. So the main thing that sort of pushed me towards atheism was the concept of substitutionary atonement, which is like God has to send Jesus to earth to forgive us all our sins. And I just thought it was a very strange thing for God to do. If God is all powerful, why would he send someone to die on a cross to forgive our sins? He could have just made us without sins in the first place. I mean, there are many reasons why it's a load of nonsense, but this, I knew in the back of my mind it wasn't true. And I recall, sitting in my bedroom as a teenager Googling, how come Jesus had to die? And how come this, how come that? And not being able to find anything that could convince me that it was true. And this went on for years, let's say I was 16, 17, 18, 19, until, I made sure not to read anything that was logical. I made sure not to read anything about atheism, and I made sure not to read anything about rationalism, because I knew that it would turn me. I knew it was going to happen, but I didn't want it to happen. in the end, the straw that broke the camel's back was, oddly enough, Bad Science by Ben Goldacre, which I didn't pick it up thinking, this is going to turn me to it, this is about rationality, but I thought it was going to be an interesting book about epidemiology, and it was, but it also had stuff about scientific method in, and I just couldn't ignore it any longer. I think that's all I have to say. I think it's, thank you.